ama kontufuo ya so ma de enya je kwama me ankoduru ma send enru ye bia we die se ma me na de kwa kwama na tap send se papa so a tap send hwe se uni obi abra person kwama ni bibia UK for ya te de tap send wallet aba na wallet na aba no hwe enya wallet kuma enwa ni se wo die se wo beso diska be kokora na ende ya nsese ikoso yi enumre ya sika bi oho bia send ko tap send wallet de so ebra wo beso use bia ewa wo dia eda ho maso ahwe aboa me enwa na didi ni dwuma tap send ema re fi se wallet.
Are you okay?
I'm on a date with you. I'm perfect. It's my sister. Need to make sure she's okay.
Okay, that's fine. Please attend to her.
German.
Bro, my issue. I'm on a date and I just realized I'm cashless.
But you know what? You owe me one. You owe me one. Check your phone, little bro.
Bakuku is spoiled.
Don't mention her.
Thank you.
Is your sister okay?
Oh yeah, she's great. She has a lot on her plate. So what do you think? Let's grab drinks after this.
Sounds good.
Hi, good evening, everyone, and you're welcome to the OT Health Talk, your weekly health focus show where we dive deep into the topics that matter. My name is Dr. Akosua Ofosua-Asiedu, and I'm still your host in the absence of Ms. Habna. And as we always do this, you know that every Wednesday from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m., we bring you expert insights, practical advice, and discussion on crucial health issues. And tonight we will be talking about how to deal with grief, and your favorite doctor, my favorite doctor, Dr. Akos, will be the one, as usual, giving us the, should I say, the lecture, not the lecture anyway, will be telling us about how to deal with grief. So Dr. Akos, how are you doing this evening?
Well, I'm very fine, thank you.
I like your hair.
Somebody's been calling me. What have you been calling me?
Shaba.
Shaba. Yes, this is all part of dealing with grief. So welcome, guys. Welcome. It's lovely to see our faithful watchers, our people who turn up on time, because you guys are always here. So we love you and we appreciate you. Just a shout out to OT Media and Tap Send as well for obviously giving us this platform, enabling us to be able to use this. Blessing, we haven't even started. What question do you have? Blessing, what question do you, is it a mistake?
I'm sure it's a mistake.
Fair enough. Anyway, yeah. So thank you, Blessing, for coming in. Cecilia, Joyce, Kobe, Suzanne. I think I saw that favorite
Jonas.
Yeah, Jonas is here as well. So yeah, welcome all of you guys. I'm gonna dive straight into it. Try to make this nice and brief. Please take notes so they can ask you questions. So this is important. I'm going to delve into some topics about even alcohol and drug sort of dependent as well. And obviously Dr. Kojo is here as well, so you can look at Jonas's face. Yes, I'm going to talk about all of that. So right, let's delve right into it. So dealing with grief can be deeply personal and a challenging journey. Everybody's different. Everybody's journey is different. Emotions arise and go. They can be up and down. Grief can come from a number of different things. It can come from losing something or someone that you hold dearly. So often people associate grief with sort of losing a loved one, so death and things like that. But actually other things such as even losing money, losing a house, losing a job, these can all cause grief. So, I think a lot of the time we stereotype what a person's grief should be. There's no such thing as, well, there is such a thing as abnormal grief, but everybody grieves in a different way. So just because the way you grieve is different to somebody else's grief doesn't make it abnormal. Okay. So number one, we have to understand what grief is. It's a natural response to loss. As I said, it manifests in many ways. Some people can have it emotionally. It can be physical. It can be mental. Common feelings of grief include sadness, anger, guilt, feeling confused. And some people actually feel a little bit even relieved, which is, you might think if you're relief, you're not really feeling grief, but you can. I'll give an example. If you've had a loved one who has suddenly become, a very dependent on you. So, let's say they got an amputation, lost a leg, and for the past 5 or 6 years, you've had to be doing all the care. Not to say you do not love the person, but when you lose that person, as much as it might be sad and you might feel sad and confused, there might also be feelings of relief. That doesn't mean that you're not grieving. Okay. So it is important to recognize that grief doesn't follow sort of a linear path and that everybody experiences it differently. The way to sort of strategies of dealing with or coping with grief is to acknowledge your feelings. Number one, you have to allow yourself to feel the full range of feelings. When people grieve, sometimes they try to stop themselves from feeling sad or stop themselves from crying. Or, you just have to let it go. You have to let yourself go, let yourself feel everything, because only acknowledging all those full range of feelings will you be able to sort of get over the stage of grief. Suppressing your feelings can prolong the grieving process. Sometimes you realize if you cry, you let it out, go into the bathroom, let it all out, you actually feel much, much better. But if you suppress it, then it can prolong the grief feelings. Talk about it. Again, women tend to be better at this, as you can see. Men tend to sort of hold everything and bottle in it inside. But sharing your feelings with others can be a powerful way to process grief. Whether it's with friends, family, or even a therapist, somebody like myself, expressing your emotions can help you feel very supported and understood. I had a patient come into the hospital today, into my GP practice today, and they wouldn't talk to anybody in the family, but they got into the room and they poured everything out. And I guess another thing is, obviously, as medical professionals, we're able to sort of make people feel like it's a safe space. He literally walked in because his mum had forced him to come and see me. And as he sat there, it didn't look like he was going to say anything. And I literally just looked at him and I said, hey, no judgment here. Like, I am your doctor. I'm not here to judge you. So anything that you say in this room is confidential. Just go for it. And before I could even finish what I was saying, literally poured out, a full range of emotions. And, that's our job. So if you feel like you can't talk to anybody within your circle, that's what we are there for. That's what doctors are there for. That's what therapists are there for. So go to your GP, talk to somebody. Seek support. Surround yourself with a strong support system. And again, this point is a bit because not everybody can have that. So let's say all your family members are in Ghana and you're the only one in Italy, or you're the only one in, Germany. You don't really have any friends who speak your language. This can be difficult. But thank God for social media these days. We can still use other mediums to help us connect with our support system. So your support system could include loved ones. It could include support groups. It can also actually even include counseling. So there are some, for example, for people who may have an alcoholic dependence, there's alcoholic support groups, so like the AA group. You can essentially go there and talk to some people there. Sometimes just knowing that others care and are willing to listen can make a significant difference. And sometimes, though, the good thing about a support group is if you have a support group and sometimes just knowing that you're not the only person going through it, somebody else is going through it, and being able to share your experience with that person can also help with grief. Taking care of yourself. Now, I know this is a difficult point because usually when you're grieving, sometimes you don't even want to get out of bed and it can be physically draining, but make sure to prioritize self-care for yourself, getting enough sleep, getting exercise, sometimes just going out for a walk, simple activities, relaxation techniques. There are even apps these days like mindfulness that can help you just relax, get into a zone, focus on your breathing. And those can help. Initially, you might feel like, oh, I'm wasting my time, but it really does help. And accept that grief comes in waves. So some days might be harder than others. Sometimes you might feel absolutely normal. You might go to work, you might have a laugh, you might go for a drink with a colleague and everything is fine. And then all of a sudden, within the next 10 minutes, you're feeling really down, really, sometimes you're actually very, very happy. You're actually, everything's going normal. And then let's see, you see something which reminds you of something that you've lost. You see someone who reminds you of the person that you've lost, and then it can all go downhill. So just accept that that is normal. And some days you might feel like, oh, you're getting over it. And then suddenly it hits you again. And that's absolutely fine. Even, I say this, but even sort of being in a long-term relationship and losing that. I've seen people in my clinic who've been in a long-term relationship, 7 years with their partners, and then there's been a break of relationship, a break of trust, and that's grief. And a lot of time people feel like, oh, that's not, you're being spoiled, that's not grieving. That's grieving. In a way, you've kind of lost somebody, lost somebody that, imagine you're living with this person, waking up to them, going back home to them, cooking with them, and then all of a sudden there's a huge sort of vacuum. You can experience feelings of loss and grief when you end a long-term meaningful relationship. Right. So find meaning and purpose. This is probably one of the most important points I'm going to talk about today. As you move through grief, you may find it helpful to seek out new meanings or purpose in life. This could involve volunteering. It could be helping others or pursuing other activities, or just something that brings joy to even playing sport, finding a new hobby. Now, I'll come to this. A lot of people tend to find a new negative hobby. So people tend to find something like going to pubs, drinking. Some people even find new sort of groups where they're getting involved with drugs and things like that. Now, that's a negative experience. As much as it might help you get over the grief, but it's actually ruining other things for you. So it's actually ruining your life in other ways, which you can't imagine. And I'll come to this point in a minute. Last 2 points: be patient with yourself. Healing with grief takes time. It's important to be gentle with yourself. There may be moments where you feel overwhelmed, but trust it with time. The intensity of the grief will lessen. And then the last point is consider professional help. Obviously, I've touched on this already a few times already, but I just want to emphasize that if your grief feels unbearable, or you find yourself unable to function in life on a daily basis, then you have to consider seeking help from a therapist or a counselor. You might start off talking to your GP. They can signpost you to important services. Professional support can provide you with tools and strategies to manage your grief. So that's sort of very, very important for us to do. Now, just sort of the coming out of how to cope and manage your grief and talking about the risk factors involved with grief. So some people can turn to sort of substance abuse and misuse. And in this case, when I talk about substance, I mean things like alcohol, things like drugs. You might find some people might think even things like smoking, vaping, it's a one step at a time. There are some medications, obviously, they're class A drugs, class B drugs, illegal drugs. And there are some things that are a bit more, you could say a bit more serious than others. But even people can even get addicted to things like even painkillers, like your normal painkillers, like, your ibuprofen, paracetamol, or codeine, So we tend to think of drug abuse or drug misuse as only getting addicted to sort of your class A drugs or your illegal drugs, but there are actually other drugs that are prescribed that people can still get, addicted to. Sort of why do people use substances for grief? Because it's like a temporary escape. Using alcohol or drugs may initially feel like an effective way to numb the emotional pain that people are going through. It may be, for alcohol, a lot of people say, when I drink, I don't remember, or I don't think about what happened. Because drinking, when you get drunk, it sort of takes away all of that. But remember that there are complications to the drinking as well. And even though it might be solving the problem acutely, long term, it's actually not doing anything for your grief. And you're going to end up with two problems, which is your grief unresolved and problems with alcohol, which then can turn into additional health problems for you. We know alcohol can cause liver problems. It can cause pancreatic problems. It has problems with your heart. It can cause early death. So, these are all things we need to consider. And regular use of substances can lead to increased tolerance. So, for example, when you're drinking more, your tolerance so if you start off drinking, you might find that if you drink half a bottle of wine, red wine, that usually does it for most people, actually. But half a bottle of red wine will get you drunk. The more you drink, you find that your tolerance increases, and then you find that actually you need more. So we have to think about substance misuse also leads to sometimes financial difficulties because substances are expensive. If you think about your bottle of wine and champagnes and things like that, even the cheapest one is not really that cheap, compared to other, compared to like an apple juice or pineapple juice. Alcohol is expensive. And if you think about drugs as well, drugs are expensive. So a lot of people end up having not just health problems, not just not overcoming their grief, but then they end up having financial problems. And then that can actually lead on to losing more things. A lot of people I know who've, or I've had consultation with, who've had alcohol and drug problems, initially started off with just a little bit, have ended up losing their lives, losing their wives, so like their house, because they've become an unbearable person, so they've lost their support system. Their family have all kind of gone away from them because they've become unbearable. They've ended up losing their house because people who get drunk and use substances end up not sort of prioritizing what's important. And you can find that a lot of the time people can even take out they can take out equities on their mortgages to go and buy alcohol and drugs, and essentially then they end up losing their houses, or they're not able to use the money that they used to pay rent. They'd rather use it to go and buy substances or alcohol, and they end up losing their accommodation, end up becoming homeless. See some things that think about. Substance misuse can worsen mental health. So instead of actually improving your grief, it can worsen your grief. It can impact relationships I've talked about, and then their physical health risks. So those are the sort of things I want to talk about when it comes to substance misuses. The last thing I want to sort of highlight is the signs, what we need to look out for if you think there's nothing wrong with drinking a bit of alcohol, except, if it's against your religion, or if you've got a health condition that you can't drink it. Nothing wrong with doing that. But if you use it to mask your grief, and it's almost like when you tell a little kid to clean their room and they end up taking everything off their bed and shoving it under the bed. You've not dealt with a problem. You've just made it look good for a minute, but the problem still remains that all the dirty socks and things is under the bed, and eventually the room's going to stink really badly because the socks has not been washed and it's been there for 3 weeks, and is all going to come out. So signs to look out for is drinking more or using more frequently than usual. So if you usually take, let's say, a glass of wine at dinner, and you end up finding yourself you're finishing a bottle at dinner, those are some of the red flags you need to look for. If you're relying on alcohol to deal with your emotions, so every time that you think about your grief or you think about your loss, if the first thing you have to do to make you feel better is grab alcohol or grab a drug, instead of letting yourself cry or letting yourself feel the full range of that emotion, then that's a red flag sign to look out for. Neglecting your responsibilities. So if you have rent to pay and you're using the rent money to pay for alcohol or drugs, if you've got to pay school fees and you're neglecting your responsibilities, if you have to go to work in the morning but you're too drunk, or you feel like you can't go to work, you've got to drink, and then you get drunk and you can't go to work, these are signs to look out for. Changes in your behavior, becoming more withdrawn. So a lot of people who start substance misusing, because you don't want people to know what you're doing, you tend to shy away from people. If you're grieving and you feel like, again, it can be a normal response to kind of want alone time, but if you feel like you're wanting alone time because you're wanting to drink or have some drugs, that's a red flag, and like a red flag sign. Now, again, I'm saying this to people, I'm saying this today, not just for yourselves, but if you see somebody who you feel is getting withdrawn, if you're with somebody who you feel has experienced grief, but you see them withdrawing or, neglecting responsibilities or any of these signs on them as well, if you're somebody who's part of their support group, obviously make sure to try and signpost them to the GP, or sometimes you can even call the doctor. I've had people call me and say, hey, I'm worried about my sister. Do you mind coming home to review them? So you can also help, because sometimes when people are using, if you're grieving and you're using alcohol and misusing substances, your brain's not really working in the right way. So you might not even pick up these signs, but people around you can pick up the signs. And the most important thing is for people around you to be able to say, hey, we're here for you, and then try to push you in the right direction. So get you help. Yeah. And then the last thing is denial. So if you're drinking, let's say 2 bottles a day, and somebody who loves you comes to you and says, hey, I think you're drinking a bit too much, and you're in denial, and you suddenly get a bit angry and you get a bit pushy, like, no, I'm not, I'm using that. I'm not an alcoholic. Nobody even says you're an alcoholic, but you've already started saying I'm not an alcoholic, a bit in denial. That's also a sign to look out for. Okay. The last thing what I want to end with is that there are 5 stages of grief. So the first stage is denial, and this is not outside sort of substance misuse, but if sometimes hey, is it true that this person is dead? Oh my gosh, is it true that I lost £1 million? I wish. Oh, is it true that I've lost the house? Is it true that this guy has broken up with me? This girl has broken up with me? You know, you're in denial. You're not quite believing. It takes a while. And then the second stage is anger. I can't believe I've lost the house. I can't believe this bitch broke up with me. Oh, I'm going to show them, you know, and that's anger coming out. And then the third stage is bargaining. Maybe it was my fault. Maybe they had a right to break up with me. Oh, maybe they died because of me. When was I, you know, what? Maybe I wasn't there for them, and you start sort of almost questioning yourself. So that's the third stage of grief, when you kind of go into the maybe stage. The fourth stage of grief is then depression, where you're like, oh my goodness, it's actually happened. They've broken up with me. Oh my goodness, I've lost the house. And it's almost that reality coming into play, like, and then you get into a really low mood, a really dark place. And this is where most of the time we have to be careful in that at that fourth stage, because at that fourth stage is where we can go into a really, really dark place and sort of lose ourselves there. And that's where we need the most support. And then the fifth and final stage, but when you hit this stage, you're basically at the end of grief. It's the acceptance. And it's, yes, I have lost that house, but I've still got life and I can make it work. Yes, this person has broke up with me. I'm gonna get up, dust the dust off my shoulders, and I'm gonna go out, have a good time with my friends, and I'm gonna pull a really fit guy. Yes, you know, I've lost this person, but I've got these other family members. They're here for me. You know, I love them. They love me. I'm gonna make it through this, and that's acceptance. And once you've got over the acceptance stage, that's a fifth stage of grief. Then most of the time you're over the grief. So there are 5 stages to grief. So it's not just, you know, it's not a quick fix. So just let yourself go through the stages, but be aware of the red flag signs to look out for, and be able to talk to somebody if you need to, or if you need help. And that would be me for the day. Sorry for rattling on.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Ako. So we'll take a quick advert. Then when we come back, I'm looking out for interesting questions, because I think, I believe and I'm hoping that a lot of people have questions. So can we get like a quick ad? Then we'll come back and take the questions from there.
White Wall Properties has all your property needs at amazing prices. Our unique development includes our flagship project, Arlington Court, which has a panoramic view covering several acres of Accra's skyline. Some of our standard features include our gorgeous swimming pool, fitness centre, and a communal garden.
All right, welcome back. Like I said, we'll be having interesting questions, and I already have a question in my DM. So, Dr. Akos, I mean, the question is, how does one talk to kids about death or grief? I've had this question before, but I'll let you answer, and I'll add up to it.
I don't. How does one talk to kids about dealing with grief
or death or grief?
Or death or grief? Okay. So this is a difficult question, and Kojo, if you already have the answer, then maybe you should just go for it. I think it really depends on the age of the kid as well.
Right.
So, for example, if you have a baby, a toddler, they won't understand what's happening. Oftentimes, there might be some very light explanations that you have to use. So, for like a toddler, I'd probably just say something like, again, if it's like a loss of a death of a person, you'd be like, you know, just having to explain, you know, we're not going to see so and so for a very long time. They've gone away, you know, we're not going to see them. You don't have to be with children at that age. You really don't, because they don't really understand death. They don't understand those things. So you just have to be honest with them in a way. Oh, you know, they might even ask. I have a friend actually, and again, this is not death, but I can say it could be similar. I have a friend who recently had a divorce, and the gentleman is in another country, and she's in another country with the children. And she says every night she goes into sort of this dark place, because every night her daughter runs to her room and says, "Where's daddy?" And it's like, because obviously she was a daddy's girl, and she was used to daddy putting her to bed. She was used to, so the mother always has to sort of, every night she has to go through this, and she has to say to the kid, we're not going to see daddy for a very long time, and unlike death, at least even with this one, I think that they could do a phone call, but I think it was quite a bad breakup, so there's actually no communication between the two of them. So it's one of these things where you kind of just have to explain it in a way which, at the level which the kid understands. For older children, it's a little bit more harder. I'm going to let Dr. Kojo come in.
I think I had this. I was at the hospital, and I think a mother passed, and obviously, like the child, and I was given the task to go and then break the news, which was a difficult one, but I had to decline because I didn't know how to go about it. So my boss made me understand that, first of all, like you said, you have to actually consider the age and the development of the child. And if basically, I think he said if they are under 5 or 6, you would have to be careful. You don't really have to go like direct like that. Like, as you just said, like you won't be seeing maybe mommy for a long time and that kind of thing. So as they grow up, they get to understand the absence of mommy, and then you now break it down to them. And I was told to be very clear. Don't be using avoid what's it called, words like passed away, because that would be, they won't understand. So you just have to be like very direct. And where we come from, we normally don't acknowledge the fact that it is okay to be sad. It is okay to feel like this. They always try to let you shrug it off, but that is not the right thing to do. As you break the news, you have to let them know that it is okay for you to feel the way you are. So reassurances actually come in these. And especially when they are way younger too, you can actually use books or stories to like tell the story, in the sense that people will not probably live like forever. Something can happen, and then you break the news to them, like this is what happened, and then this and that. So, and be very patient too. I think this, with what Dr. Akosua said, should actually do. So there is no formula to it. You never know how someone will probably react to it, like how, because these are kids, it may affect them very badly, especially if they really have a close connection with whoever that has passed or whatever that they are going through. But you just have to be patient and be careful and know when it is right to let it out, and give them the time to also grieve and then help them come out of it. So, yep. Any other questions? So that was my first question. Dr. Akosua, you have to pull questions from your side too. A person entered my DM. All right, Telma.
Whilst we wait for Telma, I just want to acknowledge those watching on YouTube and Facebook as well. I've just checked there and I realized there are some viewers there. I am checking the channel. So if you've got any questions and you're on YouTube or you're on Facebook, just put it in the comment. I am keeping an eye on this. I will answer them. Okay.
Right. Hello.
Hi, Telma.
Okay. So with the depression and anxiety, my partner is going through the same, so it's actually affecting our relationship. So he's grieving his brother who passed on 11 years ago. And he has lost his sister, brother, and a mother. And going through his previous divorce. So it has left him with anxiety and a depression. And he has been drinking and also taking substance with it. I try to encourage him all the time, but at this point, I think he has gone so far that he doesn't want to talk to anybody. He has turned off his phone, and for the past 2 weeks, nobody knows where he is or what he's doing. We cannot get in touch with him. So this grieving and also the depression and anxiety issue is, I think, is a big issue in our society, that I find this topic really personal because I'm going through the same at the moment, and it is affecting me as well.
Yeah, I mean, Thelma, thank you for sharing. I think it's very important that, like I said, we understand that, especially in our communities, in the African communities, particularly in the Ghanaian, I can't speak for other African countries, but mental health in itself is not very well understood. Then you add on sort of grief and how it affects our mental health. It's very difficult. And I think the trouble that sometimes we fail to understand, like you've quite rightly said, and I didn't touch on this in my talk, but if you've had one grief and you've not even gotten over that grief, and then there's another grief on top of that, and then you need to get over almost two things. And obviously then it sort of prolongs how long you have to get over. And then there's another knock, and it's almost like you keep getting knocked, and it can be incredibly difficult, actually. And I think is a difficult situation which you and your partner, your husband, find yourself in. In terms of not being able to find him for the last 2 weeks, I think that's probably the most important thing right now is, I would say, have you reported it to the police per se? Because at this point, it's almost a missing person.
No, he's in America and I'm in UK, so it's difficult.
Okay.
I have been in touch with his friends, some of his friends that he can, he's getting in touch with, and they say he's okay, but he's not talking to me. He's not talking to his dad, and he's not talking to me.
Yeah. So when it becomes like that, I suppose he's still in touch with somebody, so that's a good thing. Perhaps that person can act as a support system. Now, you find a lot of the time that when these sort of things happen, people tend to shy away from their loved ones. And like I was saying, they tend to go into isolation because sometimes they feel guilty. They don't want to see you in the way that they're feeling. They don't want to let you down. And they can sort of, and sometimes they just want to be alone. They just go into isolation. But these are some of the red flags I talked about. However, for somebody from the other side, when it's not you experiencing it and you're supporting somebody, we have to be careful not to sort of push that person too much, because actually sometimes as well, if we push it too much, that person might become more and more withdrawn and they might move more and more away. In this sense, it sounds like he might not be open to doing sort of any counseling or getting any help, because it sounds like he's probably gone past that. Is that right?
He's having a counseling. He's going through a counseling, but I don't know what that is, because he has been having a counselor for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he keeps drinking. He will stop with the drinking for about a week and then he'll go back to it. And yeah.
I mean, Kojo, unless you have anything to add, I think it's, for me, the fact that he's going through counseling, number one, is a good thing, because the counselor can, I know, even though they've had it for a long time, if you think about it, his grief is really quite an abnormal grief, and he's had knock on knock on knock. So it's going to take a longer time. So patience is key in this sort of situation. The fact that he's engaging with the counselor, to me, is actually a good sign, because most often people will just not even want to engage because they'll be in denial about the whole thing and say, leave me alone, I'm grieving, I don't need any help. But for the fact that he's doing the counseling, he's identified that actually he does need some help. So I think, some patience and some time.
What sometimes he says it, the last time I spoke to him, he said he wants to work on himself with his therapy. But then he was again talking about he wants to go to a place that he doesn't even know. Sometimes he says, he would just want to drive and crash himself. So again, it's about suicidal thought.
Yeah. And
but the last time I spoke to him, he said he wants to do this alone with his therapy.
Yeah.
So I don't know how long I can leave him not getting in touch with him, or like as you said, if I push him too much, he will go off completely. So I'm trying to respect his wishes for now. But I don't know how long that I have to leave him.
Yeah.
Or do I have to wait for him to come around?
I think it would be difficult for me to say whether to leave or not. That would be entirely your decision. But what I can advise is that you have to remember that you're also a person who's also got you've got mental capabilities. And if you need to think about your mental health as well. And sometimes, as much as we say we need to be there to support others, we need to think, are we in our own right selves to be able to support that person? Because if you're not in your own right self, you cannot support that person fully. So you need to make that assessment. Sometimes like I said, it sounds like this gentleman is actually getting the help that they need, and it might take a longer time than not. So if you feel that you've got that you're within that mental capability of being able to support them through it, then by all means do offer your support. But if it gets to a point where you feel like this is having a negative effect on your mental health, then you need to take care of yourself, and that's what I will say to you.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
All
Thank
right.
you.
You're welcome. I'll just add this to it. I'm sorry that you're going through all of that, and I hope that things will come together soon. But the one thing I would probably want to chip in is, like Dr. Ako said, that you have to be mentally strong yourself. And as to whether you should, how long you can actually keep up with it, if that is what he wants, and I'm also happy about the fact that he's actually going through counseling. You have an emotional attachment with this person, and the more you get worried, I mean, it is normal and it is natural for you to feel that same way. But if you can, you would have to like step back a little bit. Don't be pushing him too much. But at least if it's not by calling, or maybe you just leave a text, hi, I'm just checking up on you, just keep it very short. Or like when you hear from him, fine. If you don't, if he texts back, and then you get to realize that it is okay, like checking up on, start from like, take it like you starting get to know the person. So you're just checking up randomly. It might get tiring at a point where probably he doesn't even reach out or even reply or something of that sort. But then it might also affect you one way or the other. So you would have to stand back a little bit and then just be doing the normal checkups to see whether the person is fine. And once in a while, you can probably just ask, how is therapy going? How is counseling going? Just to show like concern that you are also there. But if you don't take care and you push yourself too much, he will probably come out of that and you will now be going through it, and it's going to become another thing on its own. So you can just start from that bit by bit till he comes around. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I don't know. I think I had another question in my DM. Dr. Ako's eminent. How do I, when should I see a counselor or psychologist if I'm struggling with grief?
Okay, so this person might have come late because I think I didn't mention it before, but I'll just go through it again. So there were some red flag symptoms to sort of look out for. There's something, I didn't talk about this, but there's something called the abnormal grief reaction. So usually it's grieving somebody is normal up until when it's not normal, and that's usually over 6 months. So naturally, medics allow people, I say medics allow, but usually if you grieve for up to 6 months, you're going through these 5 cycles of grief and it's fine. But after the 6 month point, it's still okay to sort of be maybe around the sort of the 4th point of grief or even the 5th point of grief. If you're going through the stages, then it's normal. But if after 6 months of, losing whatever it is, a person or whatever it is, you're still at the first stage of grieving, that is known as an abnormal grief reaction. So if you think about the 5 stages I talked about, the first stage was sort of being in denial. So if after 6 months you're still in denial and you're still thinking, oh no, this person's not dead, they're going to be raised up from the dead or something like that, expecting a miracle after 6 months, then that's a bit abnormal. We'll think about reaching out to a counselor. If you're in sort of not the denial phase, where you're in the anger phase, where you're angry and you're sort of angry at everybody. So, a little bit of something and then you're hitting out at people, a little bit of something, you're hitting out at people, you're angry at yourself, you're angry at your circumstances. That's also something to look out for, to see a counselor about. Even in the beginning stages of grief, so people cope in different ways and people have better coping capabilities. But the most important thing to look out for is it affecting your daily life or your quality of life? So if you're grieving to the point of when you lose somebody, yes, you might cry, you might have some sleepless nights. But if you're only getting 1 hour of sleep a day or a night because you're crying throughout the night, even in the beginning stages, if you're locking yourself up in a room, you've not eaten for a week, if you won't open it, basically you're self-harming, you're harming yourself. These are signs to look out for even in the beginning of grief, to say, no, I need to talk to somebody. I don't know if Kojo, you have anything else to add, but these are sort of the red flag signs that I will look out for.
Yeah, I think it's very necessary for you to know that. That's why it's good to join and get to know some of these things that we share. If you know the stage that you find yourself in, I think it will also help, because some people don't have knowledge about it, so they don't know how to even go about it, manage it in the first place. So it is better for you to know the stage where you find yourself in and the necessary actions that you are supposed to take from there. Because if, let's say, it's that, like you said, in a denial stage, you understand that, okay, fine, this person is going through this and that, let's give it time. But the moment it gets to the extreme, then you would have to come in and then do something about it. So please don't forget the stages of grief, because each and every day we go through something of that sort, and it's always good for you to join the OT Health Talk. You won't get it anywhere, and Dr. Akosua will be the only person to tell you.
Let me actually give you, I think, so remembering the stages of grief, at the end of the day, you're not medics, so it might be difficult. So I'm going to give you an illustration for you to remember it, okay? So first of all, think if you lose something, that'd be no, it's not true. It's not true. No, I have not lost this. That's the first stage. No, I don't believe it. That's the first stage. The second stage is adding intina ade melusis ade. So some people can even say oh nyame adding tia, oh God, why? So you're angry at God. That's the second stage of grief. God, I'm angry at God. And then the third stage is now you start bargaining. And now nyame ebi drama no means senti. Oh, and I say maybe I'm unkind my Bible. Maybe I didn't read my Bible. Maybe I didn't go to church. Is that why you're doing this to me? That's bargaining. So that's the third stage of grief. So if you just think about, are you making excuses? Are you trying to figure out why, what happened? It's not your fault. It's some things is out of our control. That's the bargaining stage. And then the fourth stage is, what's the fourth stage?
Wait, I took some notes here. The fourth stage is depression.
So after you bargaining with God, then the fourth stage is, hey, you know what I mean? Just sort of feeling down, because at the fourth stage, it's kind of starting to sink in. It's starting to sink in and say, actually, this is happening. This has happened. Whether it's your fault or it's somebody's fault, or you're angry at God, it doesn't matter. Whatever's happened has happened. Remember, fourth stage. That's the fourth stage. That's depression. Yeah. And then the fifth stage is
acceptance. Yeah.
You've accepted it. So, okay, it's serious. I have to now move on. Like, at the end of the day, I'm living. I'm still 20 years old. I'm still 40 years old. I still have another 30 or more years to live. Basically, I just need to move on with my life. So that's acceptance stage. So hopefully that illustration will help you. Sorry if you don't speak G or you're not, I can. It probably didn't help you very well, but yeah, that's the stages of
Please be taking notes, because myself, I do take notes, even though I'm a doctor, but no knowledge is waste. I mean, it tends to refresh you. All right. My brother Jonas, he asks and then gives a solution to the problem at the same time. So
me 2 in 1. Wow, me deep, you know.
Mehu, si campaign
mehu. Ana o campaign wa hana.
The classes no, I did class mo la gana. Ni the class mo. Me question no anyway. I question but okay about signs to pick to know they say like you are going through that that kind of depression level, like you are getting that signs. No, you just hit on it now. One thing too is you have to say you don't have good maybe friends around you that might be able to help you, because you see best for the same feathers flock together. So maybe we will be out clubbing, and you are going through the depression. No, it is easy for you to go deep, because if you are a single man, like, and you don't have a partner, so you live on your own, or once in a while your girlfriend comes in. But what I'm thinking is, when you go through that, you are going through that stage, your friends will not pick it up. Sometimes they must see to be something loud, and the way you drink this time, you try. Hey, you power, the fit drink one bottle. You see, they see it like a compliment, like, oh yeah, this guy is improving, because they are not seeing the sign. And talking about culture, no, it's true. Culture, no, we don't allow you to kind of like, try and show some weak sign. You be strong, be strong, be strong. So you end up being more silenced. That is the difference between men. Men, we solve our problem by kind of like, thinking. But women solve their problem by making noise. It's like they be, hey, they may like, So we absorb it more, but women bring it out easily. And see, some of the signs about this depression, is I think some of them depends on where the environment you are. That can help. If the environment you are is a very good environment, or you have good friends, they can pick it up and then see the difference. But also, if you don't have a good environment and you are a single parent or a single person, you might also not be able to pick it up, because you don't see a mad person doesn't know he's mad. You see, people outside will know this guy is mad, but you don't have anybody to tell you that, like, the way you are going, Charlie, you enter the red line, or. So I think sometimes is the environment to count quite in a way. It could be a work environment, but most of the times it's between the immediate family. If you are a married person, if you have your wife and you guys are very focused, once one of the partner is losing the track, you can see it. But when it's not a balanced home, it's hard to see, and that's also a very dangerous thing.
I think, Jonas, you see that with what you're talking about, I think there can be positive and negatives, and I can definitely see what you're saying. You see, my mom has always said to me that in Ghana is like a community, because I've not really lived in Ghana. Well, I was very young when I lived in Ghana, so I don't really remember what it was like. But she says Ghana is more like a community. She always says to me that because you don't have somebody at home to be talking to. But in Ghana, at least you have your neighbor, the compound, you have a Bible, Christ's little band or something, like in Ghana, the culture is more of community. So you're quite right. If somebody is living somewhere in Ghana, I feel that there might be other people who may pick it up, as much as it might not be maybe their friends who they go. But if they go to church, their church leaders may pick it up. If they've got neighbors, their neighbor, in this country, every neighbor just likes to keep themselves to themselves. But in Ghana, people might actually have a relationship with their neighbors. There might be, in Ghana, you've got your whole cousins, your whole flock of family. So you might be a single person, but you definitely have some Ejaku who is always checking on you. Even if at the very least they're coming to you to disturb you because you're living in Accra, to give them money or something. So, so there's always going to be some sort of community that in Ghana might be able to pick these things up. The downsides to Ghana, or the risks of Ghana, is that because we don't really pay attention to mental health and these things, even if people pick up these subtle changes in behavior, they might not see anything wrong with it. They might just be like, oh, this person has lost his wife and he's going crazy. And they won't, they might not make any try to help you in any way. But that's why these shows are here. That's why the OT Health Talk is here. That's why we're here to sort of inform people of what they're supposed to look out for. And I always say this to all of you guys that are here. This talk is not just for you. You've heard it here. You go and spread it as well. If you go and, you're talking on the phone and you say, oh, I'm watching this OT Health Talk every Wednesday, and the doctor on the show was saying this, that, and that. So, the next time, then you can maybe you even had this example in your family before. Oh, when Brother Ken was doing this, we were thinking this was the reason, but actually, according to doctor, this is maybe the reason he was doing it, and you can use these examples in your family, and you can also educate them. So even though they're not listening to this show, you're still spreading that message and you're spreading that good word, and hopefully we'll get the word across. For people who live outside of sort of the Ghana community, in the UK, Italy, wherever in the Western world, it tends to be more isolating. But the good thing about living here is that if you're working, somebody will pick it up from work. If you start to miss work a lot of the time, your colleagues will pick it up. Sometimes there are some neighbors who are quite good. I had a neighbor call my GP the other day for a neighbor she was worried about. There are some communities here in the UK that neighbors actually look out for each other as well. if you go to church or you join other groups in the UK, not just necessarily, friendship groups. So again, there are people who get missed and slip through the crack because they don't have any support system. But it's very, very rare that a person will be living and not have anything. Because even if you, for example, my dad is somebody who's not very social, but my mom's quite social. So even, if somebody wasn't looking out for my dad, if God forbid, but if my mom wasn't around, my mom's friends, knowing how my dad is, will be like, like, let's check on him, let's see what he's doing, and eventually somebody will find out. So there are very, very few people who slip. There are people who slip through the cracks, but always there's gonna be at least somebody who's gonna. And that's sort of my view on things. I don't know what you think, Kojo.
Okay. Yeah. I understand where Jonas is coming from. I'll pick Blessing's question, but I think you have to also be very careful the kind of people that you have around you. If you have, like, let's say, a friendship group who know what you are going through and then they know how to help you, it is good. I think when he mentioned something about clubbing or something of that sort, where we come from, some people think that to get your mind out of, or like to get your mind off what you are going through is as going to have fun. It has a positive and negative side. It depends on where they are taking you to. If you are taking me to an environment like Dr. Akosua spoke about alcohol and all these drugs and stuff like that, if you take me to the club and then you like, I'm supposed to take my mind off it, and people are not thinking about what you are going through at that moment, and they are encouraging you to drink. When you get home, let's say you drink and then you feel good about yourself, the moment you become alone by yourself, you realize that you turn to alcohol and then you'll be drinking. As at that time, everyone is gone and they don't even know. And the next time that they would want to link up with you is, when are we having fun? And then it's the same thing. So if you don't have friends who are encouraging you to probably seek proper therapy, like counseling and then everything, trust you me, I always say this, and then you would actually be at stake. So we have to be very careful with the kind of people that we find ourselves. So you should know, these are my group of people. I know that when it happens, I can go to them and then talk to them. So you would definitely have someone that you can actually talk to. It's very rare that you don't have anyone, except Charlie Ankonam. I don't know, but it's very, very difficult. So yeah.
Wow.
Yep. Dr. Blessing.
Yeah, hello.
Hello, Bless.
Yeah, thank you very much for this opportunity. Before I ask my question, please, on the flyer we see Abena, but we don't see Abba, please. We miss Abena, so if you can bring a...
I think from my, and every time when I'm ending, I always say that she's out for a while and then she will join us very soon. Very.
Okay, because if you're doing that, it seems like people are lying to us. Please, like, don't be like Bagumia. Don't be like Bagumia. Who was last?
Please, so she's having, like I said, she's having some assessments at the moment, so she's just taking some time out to concentrate on those. But she always sends her love. She always sends her wishes. She says she misses you guys very, very much, especially our favorite watchers. She's always talking about you. So yeah, if you're here, Abena will be back hopefully by the end of the month. But yeah, for now we've got Dr. Kojo.
I think I have a problem with that. It's like you are sucking me.
Not really, but you let me my question. So, doctors, like growing up in a typical Akan society, when there's a funeral, let's say if the disease is like, let's say like 90, 100 years, people don't really feel bad for the person like passing on. Me, for example, like my mother's mother was like 119 years, and then when she died, people were not really sad.
190.
119, not 90. Yeah, so growing up, I realized that in a typical Akan society, when a diseased person is like, let's say above 90 years, people don't tend to cry. In this case, people force to cry. I've witnessed people, okay, like even they go and hide people. Like I saw my mom and his relatives like putting like a body key on their eyes so they can force to cry. So my question is, if you don't cry, does it mean you are not sorry or you are not like grieving?
No, again, this shows me so late because I mentioned this earlier, and
I was cooking. I know it. We the single ones, we the bachelors.
No problem. We'll find your wife. Don't worry.
Thank you very much.
But yeah, no. So the if just because you're not crying doesn't mean that you're not grieving. I always say this, that people grieve in different ways, and I even mentioned about relief. So even relief is actually a sign of grief. And I talked about if you've been with somebody for a long time and you've had to be the person's carer, or maybe sometimes you even think the person is suffering, or in this case, usually I know my mother also said the same thing about my grandmother, but they usually say it's a celebration of life. Once somebody is past a certain age, if they die, it's a celebration of life. It doesn't mean that you're not grieving the person. It doesn't mean that you're sad that the person is gone. But sometimes you just think actually the person has gone to be with their maker, and we're just happy that they've gone, because at the age of 119, I mean, the cultural belief in Ghana, and I'm not saying that life is not important, but it's very, very important. But the cultural belief that we Africans tend to feel is at the age of 119, they've probably achieved most of the things that they set out to do. At that point, they're probably quite weak. Most of the time, when I saw this from my grandmother, she was very healthy, and she was only using a walking stick when she was alive. But most of the time, she was just at home. She was getting bored. She'd lost all her friends. She didn't have any friends, so she just used to call me all the time when I'm at work. My grandma's trying to call me to have a conversation. I'm like, sorry, grandma, I'm at work. So sometimes when they pass away, we feel like, oh, we're happy for them in a way that we feel like they've gone to the next stage where they need to go, so it doesn't mean that you're not grieving. It just it's just a different type of grief. I think the cultural, and I always ask my mom about this as well, because I know we have professional mourners in Ghana. We actually hire people to come and cry. This is what I don't understand. If we're celebrating life, then we might as well celebrate life. Why do we need to cry, or we need to fake cry in a way? But if I say this, my mom will say you're not appreciating culture. So at the end of the day, we have a culture. There's a reason why we have the culture. So let's just do what the culture wants us to do, and sort of, and just understand the differences in culture.
Okay. I think Dr. Koza said everything. The culture will force you to do something, because sometimes when you go to a funeral and then you're not even crying, you're like, hey, you're my only movie, and now that big will be now the wounds, and then they really make a big deal. But sometimes you just have to let people grieve on their own. Like, they should naturally come on, because when I lost my grandmom, when she died, I didn't cry. I went to the mortuary, I never cried. They were doing the funeral, I never cried. But the day where they were dropping her into that was when I started crying. Like, it really hit me. You understand? Because I'm like,
it happened to me. Yeah, same.
Yeah, I was like, why should she be here? Like, that was when I was actually coming to realization that the person is not actually going to be with me, and then all of that. So sometimes I think it's culture, like Ashley just said. And
I literally feel that it's exactly the same thing happened. And I remember like my mom and my uncles, and I remember seeing them because we did the waykeeping, and they were going around my auntie. My mom and my uncles were they were not crying, but I think it got to a point where I saw my uncle, my big uncle, who I thought, this guy is a hard guy. I saw him in some corner with his space, and then he was sniffing and then tapping his eyes. And I was like, Uncle Solopa, you this hard guy now. Because I hadn't cried at that time, right? So I remember then going to the same thing. I literally got to the mortuary, and they were lowering her. They're lowering her into sort of her grave. And then it suddenly hit me. And I think this is where, like, all the time, I think I must have been in denial. I must have been, but I think it literally hit me. And I said, yo, Nana Po is actually gone. And then I remember, I cried like a baby. When I say, like, out of everybody that I cried the worst. Snot and eyes, everything coming out. But then somebody bought me Fine Yoga, and then I stopped crying. And then that was the But yeah, you would think that's how I grieved. So that was it.
Yeah, and it's actually true about we pay people to, like, the pallbearers. I think in 2017, I was working with my boss at BBC, and then we did that documentary about those pallbearers that used to, like, dance with the caskets or whatever that it is. And the woman was actually, there was a woman that we interviewed, and then she was like, it's our culture. Like, you really have to cry, like, professional. That is what they do. And I was like, I don't even understand this. But then, as they say, but I think we should do better in as much as it's our culture, but I think we should do better and then teach like the younger ones that it's okay not to feel, but allow yourself to actually go through the natural process. All right, we have a question we're running out of time, but we have a question here from Mark. My best friend who is a pastor lost her wife while delivering. Sorry about that. Though he got a baby boy, this is my best friend from childhood. He always advise in time of difficulties. So can you help me advise him because I have lost of works? Thanks. I'm sorry, Dr. Akosua, do you want to say something? I think I've seen a lot of these things like.
No, you go ahead, because obviously this is your section. This is obstetrics, and this is you deal with a lot of these sort of things in your section. So yeah.
All right. It's very difficult because sometimes it's give and take thing. I will just say this very quick and then I'll just go. Sometimes it comes in a position where it's like you have to either save the baby or the mother. It's sometimes difficult. You can lose both. Sometimes you can lose one and then save one. In this case, the mother is gone and it's like the baby boy is there. First of all, he being a pastor, this is where we should actually realize that pastors are also human beings, aside their faith and everything that they actually do. My advice is, I know you've already done express your deepest condolences, but then I think it's good that you're acknowledging the fact that he's in a complexity of emotions right now, but I think offering your presence is very key. I don't know whether he's close to you or he's not close to you, but if he's close to you, offering your presence once in a while, like you said, he's your best friend, going there once in a while to check up on the baby, probably some gift in a little way, trying to probably pass by, take care of the baby or something of that sort. It's very key so that he doesn't feel alone. I want to believe that his family or his congregation are already doing this, but you have like a better relationship, know him on a personal level. And also at this point, you would have to actually encourage him to lean on his faith more. Like you, in this time, he doesn't want to even hear what he is actually preaching to people, but you would have to be the preacher right now and then be actually like encouraging him. And like I said, I think offer him practical help and reassure him of his strength. Always remind him about the fact that he has been taking care of a community or a congregation. And even when they probably might be going through something similar or worse, or even they might not even be going through this as he is actually experiencing, but reassure him of his strength in Christ as if he's a Christian, and following up like regularly is key. There's nothing much you can actually do but just to be there for him to feel your presence, reassure him of his strength and faith. And I think basically that, but it should be a long-term thing. It's not something because he's your best friend. So.
And I mean, the only thing I have to add to that is just make a note of sort of the stages of grief as well, so that you know where he's at. And if there's a point where you feel like this is becoming abnormal, obviously you can be there for, you can notice that for him, and you can signpost him, I think you need to talk to somebody, or I think you need counseling for somebody. And most of the time, actually, it's good to be there, like Dr. Kojo is saying, that if somebody's going through these stages of grief, like initially in denial, don't try and correct them. Honestly, don't try and correct. A person has to grieve. If somebody says, no, I don't believe this is happening, you don't have to be there and say, there be 2 o'clock, like, no, you don't need to be the person to be doing that. You just need to help them through what they're going through. They can be denial, like, I can't believe this is happening. Just be like, it's okay, you'll get through this. Just encouraging words. You're not affirming their disbelief to them. You're not saying, oh no, she's definitely alive. No, you're not saying that to him, but you're just being there for them. It might get to a stage where they're angry and they're like, oh, why did God do this? Why would God do such thing? Why would God take? And then you're not there to provide answers. You're not to say, when that day you were preaching and you did not actually, you're not there to point fingers. You're not there to judge. You're just there to support. So everything they say, just be there, be a support, listen to what they're saying more than actually speaking. Because oftentimes when people go through grief, they just want to be heard. And anything you say, mostly they probably won't even hear it, but they just want you to be there. So like Dr. Kojo is saying, offer your presence. And this can be done obviously over the phone, or better in person, but if you're not in person, over the phone, over social media, whatever is fine. I hope that helps. And yeah, if you need any sort of extra specific advice that you might not want to hear, we're always happy to give you more. We'll put our details on, so you can message us on either social media, through email, whatever. Happy to give you some personalized advice.
Great. All right. Susan.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this session. It is very, very good, because I know in as much as possible, we go through different levels and different types of grief. Sometimes not knowing that we as human beings have there's an inbuilt process, like you mentioned, to know the stages of grief to go through. If we don't know all these things, that even makes the situation worse. I also think, like, just like Jonas and other people mentioned, no, it's like sometimes you be amongst friends, amongst groups. There are some griefs that you can share. That is obvious. You can hide, maybe like a loss, a death, or something. There are some other griefs too that might be difficult to share. But I think sometimes, like what we're saying, it becomes difficult from our culture to share those those things out, or to voice them out, because one, sometimes it's trust issues that we have with people. When we don't really trust the people around us, or we feel like, okay, sharing whatever you're going through, next thing that I say, what's in now, I'm outside. Mm-hmm. So if that can be a problem, if we can all somehow learn to offer that trust, that level of confidentiality as well, genuinely like empathizing or being sympathetic with a person, and also not being judgmental, it will sometimes help for people to be able to come out to share what they are going through. It could be in very small circles, or with maybe somebody that they can share it with. But not being able to trust people, and not being able to trust, like, even if I say it's not like it's going to be everywhere and all that, then that makes it more difficult, and people bottle it up, and next thing it becomes a blown out situation.
Great. Thank you very much. I think I mentioned earlier that anytime you find yourself in that stages, it is very important to identify who you can actually talk to. It's all false and that, because like you said, trust issues. Sometimes you say something to some people and they find it very trivial. I won't say maturity, it's lack of knowledge. They don't know how it's going to actually affect you. So the long-term effect is that they get to see something else. So you realize where we are coming from as a child. You're growing up, and then when you do something, you're being shouted at, and they are saying this and then that. You grow up sometimes becoming timid, or either becoming very violent, depending on the environment that you actually grew in. So you realize that if you're not able to talk to someone, or there's not, like when you're going through something, you can't say anything. That's how you grew up. So you grew up, and then you actually face, should I say, other challenges, and then you feel that nobody can actually hear you out. So you end up bottling everything, which will one way or the other have a very negative effect on you. It's going to affect whoever you end up with, whether it's a partner, you grew up, your kids, in like all these things. So it's very important for you to identify who you can actually talk to. And then, in as much as in our culture there are people that you can't even talk to, I feel being a Christian, you can actually talk to your religious leaders. We trust them enough that they will keep some of these things confidential, and then your health professional. So thank you, Susan, for that submission, and I think it's a very good one. I don't know if Jonas wanted to ask something else, or I don't know, or it's from the lab.
No. In person, I mean, come to me about alcohol. My name say, Labadino, Labadino, the main town of Labadino, a bushing up like family houses, they are next to each other. So one day, we are now call Obi keeping. No, say Busafi and Obia who are the neighborhood like different houses. And because we are very drunk, we enter Oba there to Yeram in a call second. But later, yes, who say no friend panel, and if I need a bema, the icon bema, but because of alcohol, no son, you're raw body, yes, tonight from bema, I'll be a fair. If I must say, I don't know, be a fair, I'm going to friend panel or bar, and see, it's just advice ability was sometimes, alcohol, no, the air coming now, too much of everything is bad. Alcohol, no, so what is one thing about Africa? Who sikeni what the onye kwa apotesi ni say alcohol so is very very important. Say we should educate our brothers. Sometimes you call your coffee yeah mako holiday maji holiday wa have me call Ghana na ye poly yeah ba na ye diarrhea na ye booking GP appointment. I know what I'm saying. So we should advise ourselves. Sometimes we should control how we taking the alcohol when we go back home out of excitement. It's not really helping some of my colleagues I know that they go to Ghana and they come back sick, this, that. One guy had this thing, kidney, one of the liver, is checking where alcohol. Last 2 weeks, that kind of things. So I'm just advising, say, because so says can you boost yes you are bread. But on any boost, I see what Jimmy.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonas, as always.
Yeah. All right. I have a question here. Is it normal to take out your grief on someone? Example, in the case where a wife has lost life while giving birth, is it normal to start blaming the baby, Dr. Akos?
Yeah, I think a lot of the time it is for a while because, as I talked about the stages of grief. So a lot of the time that blame will actually come at the second stage of grief. So a lot of people will be in denial. I can't believe she's dead. I can't believe, she was just here. She was just giving birth. She's not dead. And then the second stage is actually it's because of this baby. If this baby was not born, she would not have died. But that's a normal part of grief. And we all need to understand that. And I think a lot of the time when people come out of the grief, they have guilt forever because they feel like, oh, did I actually really say this? Or did I actually really do this? It only becomes abnormal if that's you get stuck at that stage. So there are people who are then stuck at that stage who you may feel that they are actually over the grief, but they'll find that later on in life, if the child is doing something, the child goes to the kitchen, breaks a glass, you pick up a cane, hit the child, oh, you look like your mom so much, blah, 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 blah. If it wasn't for you, she wouldn't. And you're actually pronouncing these things onto an innocent child who, to be honest, would never ask to be born, So no, as an example, there are other situations where people can take out anger. Like I know somebody who, if she has a fight with her boyfriend, the whole family's in trouble. She'll come and lash out on her sisters, her mothers, her fathers. There are other ways in which other people do it. And in a way, I think the most important thing is noticing that abnormal behavior, or basically noticing that, no, there's something wrong here and wanting to do something about it. Acceptance is always noticing that there's something wrong. I always say when the biggest step to recovering from anything, whether it be drug addiction, alcohol addiction, or even grief, is noticing that something's wrong. So if somebody is able to sit down and say, no, I think this is wrong, what I'm doing is wrong, I just don't know how to stop it, that's the first step. They actually know something's wrong. The worst people that we deal with who have addiction is when you tell them you have an alcohol problem and they say, no, I don't have an alcohol. That's a problem because they don't actually even know what's wrong. So noticing that there's a problem is number one, the first step. And then the second step is counseling. A lot of the time we sleep on counseling a lot again, I'm going to use Africans, especially Ghanaians, as we feel like talking to somebody doesn't solve our problems. But counselors are very, very skilled, very good at what they do. And going through counseling, there's something called CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, that can help us change the way in which we think. So usually say something like, if you suddenly think in your head that I hate this person because this person is the reason why this thing happened, they say anytime you think that, replace that thought with this would have happened regardless of whether this person was here or not. Eventually we're all going to die at some point. They get you to replace your thoughts with positive thoughts. And when you start doing that regularly, it becomes sort of second nature. And hopefully eradicates things. So counseling can help with this behavior, but I think the most important thing is noticing it first. And if you're around somebody and that person does not notice it, again, this is where we come in as being a support group. You can signpost to a friend and say, actually, and again, don't do it when the person is angry. So it's not when the person is beating the child saying, "Oh, you're the reason why your mother died," and you're going to be like, hey, Debbie, don't do that. No, because it'll make the person even feel worse and even do worse. After after everything has settled down, after the person is feeling better, pull them to a room, say, this is what you did. This is how I see it. I think that you may be going through this. I will advise that you get some help. And I think that's the best way to do it.
Okay. Thank you. It's actually very difficult to talk to people in that setting because you might even make the case worse. When I bet you do I mean to me by and then all of that stuff. That should even tell you the intense but how extreme it is. I mean where they are, and I think it's very important to when it gets to that stage, I think you should just realize that they actually need help. So last question for the night. Wow. This particular question, I think we would probably have to have like a whole talk on this, putting maybe a medic and a relationship counselor and probably a religious, like get all the three people on board and then
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I think it's a very good, but then how couples can rebuild trust in a relationship.
So I got this question in my DM and I basically said to the person, I was like, this is a medical forum. How are you going to rebuild trust in your relationship? How am I supposed to help you with that? And this is what the person replied with. They said, well, I talked about trust issues. So how can they rebuild trust to heal them from grief? I thought, okay, you put a nice spin on it. So I'll answer the question for you. Right. So if somebody is going through grief, it's going to be difficult to read. And we always say things like, you always see posts online saying once a glass is broken, it can't be fixed again. Even if it's fixed, the cracks are still going to be in it. Trust is something that takes a very, very long time to build. But again, one thing that's important is identifying the problem. So for example, if you're in a relationship and let's say there's some trust issues, you find out somebody's cheating, it leads to a breakdown of relationship. Even if you return to the same person, or even if you don't return to the same person and you enter a different relationship, because you've still got those scars or those hurt from your previous relationship, you can essentially bring those scars into your current relationship. And this is what even the last question was talking about, that sometimes the anger from your past relationships or your past experience, you can bring it into the new experience. And then you realize that anytime that, let's say, your new partner does something to you, you'll be then comparing them to the old partner, saying, assume this is what he did before we broke up. So then you start doubting the person. When that starts happening, when you start comparing your past relationship to your current relationship, that's a huge red sign. And you need to get advice, or you need to get some relationship advice from it. I think a lot of the time people don't also communicate in relationships. If you start doing that and you start noticing it yourself, I think it's worth sitting down with your partner and saying, I've realized that I've been comparing you to so and so. And I think that I'm doing this because I have some trust issues and I need you to help me get over it. So your partner can actually help you get over it. Obviously, I always say you can go counseling, you can go this, but counseling and all those things, money is involved, and you might not be in a situation where you can actually afford a relationship counselor. So these are some of the things that you can do at home. If you realize your partner on this plus side, if your partner is the one who's always doing it and you realize it, again, don't bring this topic up whilst the person is doing it. Wait, when the person's in a good mood. Maybe once you bought them some flowers. For me, is when you brought me food at work. Brought me food at work. I'm very happy. And you sit down and you say, Charlie, Akos, I realized you've been doing this a lot. And I think that I understand that it might be something that you've brought, some trust issues that you brought from a past relationship. But I think we need to talk about it and we need to work together with it. So when it comes to relationships and stuff, like Kojo said, we can delve into a lot. And, I think we need a relationship expert. We need an imam. We need a pastor. We need a Buddhist. We need all of them. We need all of them here. But my simple answer to that question is, how do you build trust again? Is building up communication. realizing where the problem is in the first place, that actually I have this problem and I'm taking it out in this way, and then seeking help. Sometimes you can also, even if you're religious, you can ask your pastor, their cell group, cell leaders who can help you, counsel you through this. We have mentors, even sometimes your father. Like for me, my mom is somebody I go to for advice. Parents and people that you look up to can also help you. So you don't need to spend money going to counseling, but if there's somebody that you trust in your life that you think can give you good advice, can literally sit down with you and your partner and help you build trust together. So do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, just a little bit. I think communication is it's key. First of all, I think if you feel that the trust is broken, for you to acknowledge that there's a breach of trust, it's very important for you to acknowledge that, okay, fine, there is a problem. Because first of all, if someone doesn't even acknowledge that there is a problem, how do you even go about it? So there is a problem, you apologize for it, then most importantly, you give the person time to heal. Sometimes you may feel that you are losing the person, but that may not be it. The person still likes you. That's the reason why likes you and still want things to work. But the person is going through grief and all that. So allow the person to also heal, and then recommit to the relationship. Make sure you set boundaries. Things that led to the breaching of trust, make sure that you actually work on it. Be transparent and be consistent with it, because if you still want the relationship, I think you would want to do the right things and not to hurt your partner. So we'll end it here, and maybe we might
I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, we hope we tried, because this one, it's over as well.
For professionals.
Even some of us now, when we get problems, who do we go to? In fact, let me ask
Buddha.
All right.
Anyway.
So we'll bring it to an end. I'll let Dr. Akos have her last words then.
Yeah, I think we've spoken a lot. And again, like I say, honestly, all people who are here today and all our faithful, if you're here with us for the first time, welcome. This is a show where we feel free. We talk about a lot of stuff, health included, other stuff included. But I just want to give a compliment that I got from one of our guest speakers about 2 weeks ago. Initially, when he came on the show, he was a bit apprehensive. He wasn't really sure what to expect. At the end of the show, he messaged me. He said, Shale, Akos, your audience here, did it be you? Because he was like, you guys come up with the good questions, you engage with the session. You made him feel like he was being, he was engaging, he was being heard, you were interacting with him. So I just want to really just stand on that and say, I really, really thank you guys, because without you guys, this OT Health Talk will not be a thing. So we really just want to appreciate you guys today. And I'm thinking of doing a show where it's just an open session where we don't have any talking sessions, but we just have people coming in and just asking questions. So like a clinic, almost like a clinic. So yeah, I'm looking at doing that probably towards the end of the year during Christmas. It'll be our Christmas special. But we've said everything about grief today. I don't think there's anything else to say. But if you forget anything, just think about the 5 stages of grief. Remember them, and just key thing to do is remember that there's always help. There's always somebody you can talk to. And if you feel like there's nobody, just message me at Dr. Akos on TikTok, and I'm here for you. Okay. Right. Could you say anything next week?
Dr. Akos, next week, who is coming?
Me.
Are you sure?
We'll find out, because today it was actually meant to be a guest speaker, but they were called to an emergency surgery, so I've just had to stand in for them. So according to the show, it really should be me next week. But what I'll do is I'll try to get our guest speaker to come next week instead. But if they're not able to come, it'll just be me. Sorry, guys. You've seen me for 3 weeks in a row now. I'm sure you're sick of me. But we'll be here next week, regardless of whether it's me or somebody else. Or maybe we'll let Kojo take it this time. We'll let Dr. Kojo take the session this time.
I thought I was coming on the 9th.
We'll still
All right, that's fine. I'm always available. Anyway, thank you very much. Thank you to our viewers. Thank you to Tap and OT Media. And in the comment section, what? Also get together, bless and get together. I see. We'll see about that. We don't know how we're going to do that, but we'll see that. All right. So thank you very much. Same time. I don't know. Okay. A minute. AK.
Hey, Naomi.
Yeah. Like I just saw Naomi. I don't know what it is. Sometimes I'm very. Naomi, please. can you just run it quick by us? I don't know what it is. I don't know whether it's a question or.
Thank you
very much.
Thelma. Thank you, Thelma, Diana, Cecilia, all of you guys, Liz, for saying that you're not sick of me, so you're happy for me to come back. Thank you. Yeah.
I just came. They were greetings.
Thank you.
We miss you too, and it's lovely to see you again. Actually,
greetings, no kwa. Na mo bro Fridia, Dr. Akosua, 99999. Timu de mechia mo wate.
Next week.
Monkos there be come bro for na send the be akwofo be tie me de mete na me ntumi nkan to de don't worry.
Yeah, thank you.
Yay. Aqua
oh, me de yes ana metina me ntumi nkan bi ntia ja greetings na. Greetings na me name.
We thank you.
Na me nsira mo ate God wo mlese mo na Oma moduma no nkoso pa.
Amen.
Thank you.
Amen. All right. Same time.
Just before we go, I just want to acknowledge our YouTube and Facebook. But I've seen that there are people watching today as well. Thank you for joining. Same time next week, YouTube, Facebook.
Right.
See you. Thank you so much. The link is in the chat as well.
Yeah, we have the Instagram link and TikTok.
Na TikTok they win you.
The link is there. So let me post it again. So I've just posted the link. But I'm Dr. So it's Dr. _Akos, Dr. _ on TikTok. And actually on TikTok, I do some sessions as well. So I do little pieces of advice on TikTok. So you can, if you sign into TikTok, you see all the content there. So feel free to. Yeah.
Now, me TikTok.
Before we get, just to also remember that tomorrow we have time with Tap Tap Send, same time. 7 p.m., 8 p.m., 8 p.m. UK time, 7 p.m. GMT. And on Friday, we have Ask the Lawyer. So you can ask the lawyer any immigration questions you have. And actually, they're very, very good. I've used them myself. So, yeah. So please remember we've got...
Dr. Ko, who make your hair?
Oh.
Shabarangs.
I had the braids. And then yesterday, I said I was going to take it off. So I cut it, and then when I finished cutting it, I
so now you have model. That's model one.
Yes, that's right. So
hey, me Naomi every day.
Okay.
Anyway, good night, all.
Right, good night. Thank you, everyone.
Good night. Bye.
Dr. Kojomi Yonkuno, me
said, oh, everyone, you're from California. The only boss. Wait, honest, baby, I will be everywhere I day and everywhere they go. Tap Send got me covered. If you need to send money or transfer money from Europe, from Canada, from USA, from UK, any part in Europe, you can send it through Tap Send. And guess what? Oceania, they will receive it right here in Ghana and many countries across Africa. So what are you waiting for? Download Tap Send now on Google Play Store or App Store. When you download, it's so easy to use. Tell your families, tell your loved ones to download Tap Send. Okay? But also, when I receive my money, the other tell the world you channel, like my view, hey, you crazy.
Download Tap Send now on Google Play and App Store. Tap Send. It's secure, convenient, easy, and fast.